Hi, this is Kevin Fitzpatrick from the Cnesta Group, and what we'd like to talk about today is a question that we're often asked about what is the science of hiring and why retention starts with the right process. And I want to take it beyond that thought for a minute. Let's think a little more broadly. And let's talk about there's not only the science to hiring, but it's an art form. It is an art form that requires you to think beyond the obvious, to look beyond the wreck and dig more deeply into what are the base requirements of the role, what is the career path look for the role, so you can sell that while you're also selling the organization. And what is that candidate going to be able to brag about in the first 2 years in their role? And organizations often struggle because they're filling an order. I have a rec. Here's a sales manager, an HR manager, a controller, a job title. Here's a job description, which all too often is written very task oriented, only focuses on the what. But in the hiring process, the effective interviewer, whether it's someone in human resources or the hiring manager, they need to focus not only on what tasks have to be done, but why those tasks or why that role is critical to the organization going forward. And just as importantly, how the person they bring into this role is going to do their task, is going to behave in their role, is going to interact with the balance of the team in order to get things done. A common mistake often made in HR in the hiring process, and as a recovering HR person myself, I certainly made it. And sometimes, even running search, I may fall back into that same challenge. And that is all too often is the hiring process is not just about getting something done. Let's check the box. Let's bring a candidate in. Let's get them into the role and move on to the next one we have to fill. That's not what it's all about. The process must begin with a fairly intrusive approach to questioning the hiring manager and understanding what are the expectations for the role. What's the best candidate look like for them? What's the team look like? Why is the job open? How has turnover occurred in this particular role? And what are the long term plans for the role? So instead of just responding to the what, think about playing chess. The art of playing chess, at least when I was taught it, and when I have the not often enough time to perhaps go back and play a game of chess, it's always learn to think 3 moves ahead. I often tell candidates when they come to me in their career transition, Kevin, I want to being considered for this role. What do I do? And I always tell them, don't focus on the role in front of you. Focus, is this the role that's going to get you the role you ultimately want? On the hiring side, the same thing goes for HR. The same thing goes for the hiring manager. Am I going to hire this individual to fill this immediate need I have? Or am I going to think more strategically? Does the capabilities and the skills and the manner in which this person does their job and the behavior and the values that they espouse through the interview process, do they match what the long-term strategic goal is for this position and for the organization? And can I immediately see where this person can go in an organization? We have several individuals for which we've done multiple placements for. And one of the things I always talk to them about is when you're looking at individuals, because we're certainly going to do this for you, can I see if I bring this person into the organization, can I immediately see them being promoted at least 2 levels above the position I'm bringing in? Now, if it's a C-suite level role you're filling, you can only go so high in the organization. So then you've got to think not only can I see this individual perhaps as a hiring manager replacing me in this role, but do I also want to begin thinking about horizontal development, which all too often companies fail to consider? So it's not just vertical, but it's horizontal development. Can I take the skill set that this individual has? As an example, the horizontal development philosophy is I'm not just going to fill a glass. The glass is half full. I'm going to fill it until it's overflowing. Well, then I'm just going to get a bigger glass. And I'm going to continue to do that till I can really look in and tap in to the capabilities of the people that I'm going to bring into this organization. Part of our unique approach at the Cnesta Group is not that we use assessments, it is the assessments we use and how we utilize them. If you think back, there's three parts to the human mind. There is the affective mind, there is the cognitive mind, and there's the cognitive. Most assessments with which you and I would ordinarily be familiar focus on cognitive, which is education and experience, or focus on affective, which could be values, preferences, behavior, personality, emotional intelligence, all of which continue to evolve and can and sometimes change situationally based on what's in front of us or what's going on in not only our professional lives, but our personal lives. And then there's also the cognitive mind. The cognitive mind is how we get stuff done. It's how we do our jobs. It's how we take that amount of energy that we have that is somewhat finite, how we apply it, and how we take our innate strengths that we're born with. We're hardwired this way. And how do we utilize them to do things? Our approach is we use the Kolbe index to address our cognitive mind. What are the striving instincts, that an individual brings to a particular role? We take it even further by working with the organization to identify the range of success within Kolbe. That's where the hiring manager or team individuals that will have input into the potential success of this role will give their input in saying, what are the striving instincts, the innate strengths that we're looking for in this role? How do we expect someone to do their job? That's step number one. And then we look at candidates and we delve into not only having them take the Kolbe index, but go through an in-depth interview process to see if they address and match the expectations of that role going forward. Thinking beyond that, we marry that with an effective assessment as well. Not only that we do focused on behavior with a version of DISC, but also focusing on DISC with emotional intelligence and chameleon leadership, and that is how do you lead with styles different than your own. And we bring all that together as part of our follow-on coaching model that we meet with candidates post-hire. Now, ironically, there is a flaw to that process. I mean, let's be real. And the flaw to that process is when someone starts in the new role, it is sometimes difficult to find the time to go back and meet with us, and we stay open to meet with them for at least 4 months post-hire at no cost to the client. We bear all those costs within our firm, but finding the time as they're driving through their first 100 days is sometimes difficult. But the reality is, in making that time and making that investment up front, we're helping them build a sustained advantage, not only being successful in their current role, but being successful and being considered for that perhaps 2 promotions beyond where we bring them in to an organization, or even the ability to drive what someone said to me many years ago when I was in my first leadership role at GE, is learning how to drive positive affectivity across the organization by being real and understanding how they do things, what they do well, what they don't do well. And then how does their behavior, their values, and even their emotional intelligence affect how they interact with other individuals in the company. And you bring all that together, it makes them a more effective contributor to the organization. It ties them more closely to the culture, maybe even impacting that culture on a more positive basis, based on just how they do things and the way their presence and how they interact and become part of the organization as a team. And then how do they personally contribute to driving sustained results across the organization, not only from their role, but should they be in a leadership role, from their team as well. That's where retention comes into play. When going out to hire someone, you're not just selling a job. You're selling an organization. You're selling a career path. You're selling a culture, and you're selling an opportunity that, yes, is like playing chess. Is this job going to get you the job you ultimately want? Is this individual, from a client perspective, going to make the difference that we need to make on a sustained basis? And a client's never going to know that even to ask that question or what the answer is unless they step back and, with whatever process they use, whether it is a retained firm like ours, or a contingency firm, or a contingency firm, or retingency firm, we're doing it internally within talent acquisition, is going through a very intrusive process up front to really look beyond that wreck and focus on what's it going to take to succeed in this company. When you're building a business, every opening is not a crisis. Every opening is an opportunity. Failing to consider the depth and breadth of what that opening is and can mean to the organization, that can lead to crisis. But opening your approach, looking more deeply, looking at not only what the job is, but the how and the why, and then incorporating that into your internal screening process or into your partnership with an external firm like ours, is going to make all the difference to your long-term retention. It really is important to go through that and using assessments, and there's many out there. There's only one that focuses on the current to mind, and that's Kolbe. But beyond Kolbe, there are extraordinary assessments on the affective side and the cognitive side that, marrying them all together, where you then can look at all parts of the human mind, give this candidate that you bring in a leg up in the process, and really helps them to drive with their positive affectivity again, that they can bring in that first 100 days, that they can potentially drive change in an organization. We have a situation where, we had a candidate for a large company. Now, we deal with, our clients right now range from $2 million in revenue, which seems like not a lot, but it is pretty good from a revenue perspective for a small company. Where I lost my train of thought, but we have an example of a candidate where they didn't quite make it through the assessment process for a particular job. But we spent a great deal of time giving that individual the opportunity to understand their innate strengths, their behavior, how they got things done, where they felt they needed to develop more, both educational and experientially. And literally within 6 months of that process, where we had to disengage because they didn't make it just based on the range of success for what our particular client wanted. However, the insights that they developed through our process allowed them to actually get a much better, much larger job that was better suited to their striving instincts and how they did things. So much so that they came back to us and they became an extraordinary client for us. In fact, we wound up filling several searches through them up until COVID hit. And they've since pulled back in many respects, unfortunately for them, because they did take a dramatic hit from when the economy was hit by COVID, and they're not yet back in the direction they want to be. However, the message there is not that. The message is, if you want to drive the right approach to talent acquisition, you want to identify the right talent, but you want to identify that talent that can deliver sustained positive effect to the organization. You want to provide opportunity for talent to come in who can then be promoted 1, 2, or more levels within the organization. And at the same time, you want to provide an opportunity for someone that, I'm not just hiring you for this role, but I see not only vertical opportunity for you, but horizontal opportunity for you that's going to not only benefit the organization, but just as importantly, it's going to benefit you as an individual as you're going on to manage your career. And it's our model. It is proprietary. It is unique. And quite honestly, we came up with this model because we wanted to make a difference in the marketplace. We wanted to provide a different approach, a more holistic view of how to hire someone, how to identify talent, not just to fill a rec, but to develop that partnership between the probable candidate that is successful to meet the expectations of a company and the hiring management within that company. So when our candidates go in, they can hit the ground running quickly. They have insight into how to coach their management, how to assess, for want of a better term, how they do things and how the existing leadership within an organization does things, and find where they need to build a segue, to be more effective in the role. So that's why when I'm asked the question, what is the science of hiring and how does it affect retention? It's much broader than that. Back to what I said originally, it is not only a science, it's an art. And it is something that is built on the partnership between the successful candidate and the client. But the only way that is built is if the client is open, or the hiring manager is open to thinking beyond, I've got to fill this job. If I don't fill this job, I can't get X done. And the HR team saying, no, wait a minute, how are we going to fill this job? What's the right talent look like? Why is that important to the role? Are we going to fill this job with someone that we can see sustainable benefit, that they can grow to meet the longer term, perhaps strategic expectations within the organization? And then pick a firm that's going to be able to partner with you to understand that, to delve into it, and to provide not only the tools, but the results with the best candidates available. And then a follow-on process that's going to partner with you going forward, staying in front of you as a client, staying in front of the candidate for their own development, to be there as that external partner to make a difference, not only in filling the role, but thereby contributing to the long-term success of the organization. That's what the right partnership does. That is what the right approach does in hiring the best candidates, in focusing on retention, and using the tools that make sense to align with your culture, your values, your long-term expectations for the role, and yes, playing chess, hiring not only for today, but thinking 3 steps ahead or 3 moves ahead to what's going to bring that sustained value to my organization. Thank you.